All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be the 78th episode of Embrace the Suck, and this is going to be the first ever episode about how to be introverted and still be successful on recruiting duty, and how to get out of that introvertedness and find your way. And I say that because here's the thing. I wanted to do an episode like this, but I'm going to be completely honest. My answer, and I said this on Instagram today, my answer when people ask me like, "Hey man, how do you be successful when you're introverted?" is, "Bro, just get out of your own head and just make shit happen." Like that's my answer. But I'm not introverted. So for someone who's introverted, that I would assume it's not that easy, because if it was that easy, they would do it. So what I went ahead and did is I made a Facebook status and I was like, "Hey, who is introverted and successful on the duty, and would you be willing to come on the episode?" And I actually had a resounding amount of people come DM me and message me like, "Hey bro, I would love to come and talk about it." And Anthony, Staff Sergeant Morgan here, was one of those people. So I really, like I said to him beforehand, the purpose of the podcast, a lot of people have their ideas of what it is, but the purpose of the podcast and this portion of it is to get people to come on here in a free space and be able to talk about recruiting duty in their own words and what they're going through, and then be able to use your story to help another person, because it's like, especially yourself, you're saying that, "Hey, I'm successful, I'm doing better." There's people who right now are struggling in their first 3 months, 9 months, that don't feel like they'll ever make it out. They don't feel like they'll ever write one contract. They feel like they'll never be able to get out of their own head. So I wanted to have someone who can come on and really kind of talk to that. So without further ado, man, I really appreciate you coming on. And can you kind of just talk us through that? Like, being introverted, what was your first take on the duty, like when you got histed or when you found out you were coming out here? Like, was there anxiety? Was it like, what was going on in your head?
Oh man, well, anxiety is always through the roof, and that's
Okay.
unfortunately, it's going to be hard for some people to kind of accept that, right? But it's always going to be part of it. But I actually volunteered to be a recruiter.
Okay.
Um,
So you went out of your way. You were like, "Yo, I'm
yeah,
introverted, but hey, I gotta
yeah,
somehow extrovert my ass."
right, yeah. I mean, that's what it came down to. Is we always talk about the enhancement to your career that an
Yeah.
SBA makes, and I knew that recruiting would take me outside of my comfort zone, essentially. And that's, well, I just shot my shot. And
Yeah. Yeah.
throughout the whole entire process, anxiety was through the roof. And I'm sure for many other introverts, they can attest to this, right? Going through the motions of what the schoolhouse was like was probably insanely
Yeah, so
nerve wracking.
talk to me about that, man. Like, because like, I'll be honest, man. Like, I don't know what it's like to be introverted at all. Like my whole entire life, bro. Like I'm jumping, I'm moving, I'm
Right.
screaming, I'm talking. So like, I don't know what it's like to be introverted. So like, what would, like, let's start from there. Like being in BRC, right? Basic Recruiter School. Like how recruiter course. Sorry. How was that experience for you as an introvert, as someone going through that?
Well, I mean, it was what I feel, and I can only speak for myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
what I feel a lot of us do as people that are primarily introverted people is we hype ourselves up, right? It's the action that's the problem. Whether we commit to the action and do it to the best of our ability or not is, the real question. So that's what I did. I hyped myself up. I was super motivated. I was ready to go into it. And then from the get-go, the first section was Marine Corps presentation skills. And that was, I mean, honestly, it was nerve-wracking. You've got 3 minutes to, write a minute or 2 minute speech, whatever it was, and then you have to present it to everybody.
Mhm.
And that was kind of like a really eye-opening moment of like the real nerves that go into having to speak in front of people, and that's only a small portion of it, really.
Yeah. But
But
so
it,
I have a question for you.
yeah,
This is a question that I've raised in the past, and I've brought it up, and some people kind of get a little agitated at me. But my thing is this, right? You're at this time when you went to BRC, were you already a staff sergeant or were you a sergeant?
I was a sergeant.
Okay, so at this point, you've been in the Marine Corps how long?
Uh, 5 years.
Okay, so 5 years in the Marine Corps. You've led junior Marines. You've given countless presentations. You've
Hmm.
spoken to people. You've given PowerPoints. You've led Marines. What I can't understand, and I really want to. What is it that all of a sudden things are different now because you're standing in front of an audience that's your peers, but you're talking about the Marine Corps like traits and the Marine Corps,
Hmm.
like what is it that changes in this light? Because I don't understand it because you were able to do it
Right.
in the Fleet Marine Corps about your MOS or your job, but now it poses a threat. Like, can you kind of explain that? Because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's something that I think about often, really, because I honestly ask myself the same question because when I left my previous unit, I was the platoon sergeant,
Mhm.
of 30 35 Marines,
Yeah.
and I think that what it is the expectation. I think that baseline as Marines, we know the baseline of what is expected of us. I'm a communicator, I'm a radio operator. So I know generally in the communication world what is expected 100%. But when it comes to things like public speaking or even just a new job or talking to people that I don't know, uh, that's what it was for me personally.
Okay.
It was hard to kind of fathom that these were people that I didn't interact with. Like I've known
Mm,
them for maybe a week.
yeah. Yeah.
And well, that's the job of a Marine Corps recruiter.
You
It's
know what?
meeting new people.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question because it definitely gives me a different understanding because I never
Right.
thought about it like that, right? Like these 35 Marines that I lead every day, like I know them, like they're my Marines, like
Hmm.
I've known them for months or years or however be whatever it be, and
Right.
we're Marines, we share this commonality. Me being on recruiting duty, being in front of a school of people, like I don't know them, like these are people that I've never met before, so like
Right.
I definitely can understand that now, and I'm glad I asked that question because it's always something that I'm like, bro, dude, you're a staff sergeant of Marines, man. Just make it
Right.
happen, bro. Like, and that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to have somebody on to talk about it because,
Yeah.
like, in my opinion, as an extrovert, I'm just like, dude, just do the damn thing. Like, I don't
Yeah.
get it.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about that though? Like, how did you get over that? Like, how did you get over that anxiety? Like through BRC, like how did you get over that anxiety for anybody who's going to come out to BRC and they're already having that overwhelming anxiety of like, damn, bro, like I just got histed and now I got to go talk to people that I don't want to talk to. Like, how did you get over that?
Well, what I realized early on, and this is the same, and I think it's important for almost every single recruiter, is knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Okay, and as somebody that's introverted, just knowing as much as you can know brings that sense of being comfortable. So I wasn't like number one in my BRC class, but I scored above a 90 on every test, right? I did as well as I could. Now, when it came to performance evaluations, that was a little bit different, and it was just repetition. So, I mean, with that, my first evaluation was them pausing the video, my instructor pausing the video and saying, "Stop, stop what you're doing. You need to relax."
Yeah.
But then again, like that was somebody that I was comfortable with at that point because
Yeah.
it's been 2 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But with enough repetition going through each other performance evaluation, you start knowing what to say. You start, or at least having a baseline of knowing what to say. And you
Mhm.
just go through the motions and having that knowledge,
Yeah.
which I think for a lot of introverts is just, oh well, I don't know, or I'm not the best at this, and I'm nervous about even opening my mouth,
Yeah.
that's where it kind of stems. So I would say
Got
just
you.
just the knowledge over time and trying to put as much effort as I could towards
Well,
that is what helped
and
me.
yeah, and like you're saying, like the repetitions, like
Mhm.
a lot of people on recruiting duty hate role plays.
Oh, yeah,
They hate. They're
yeah,
like,
they do.
bro, like this is stupid. They don't work. Da da da. Da."
Hmm.
And it's just like, bro, like, well, when you were, I'm Motor T, and I deployed to Afghanistan. When we were getting geared up to go to Afghanistan, we were doing rock drills, and guess what? Every Lance Corporal was saying, "Oh, these rock drills are stupid." You're calm when you're talking over the comms and you're trying to give a class about how to what to say and what not to say. Everyone's like, oh, this is retarded, why are we doing this? Okay,
Yeah,
well, it's because we got to get the repetitions in, because when we actually have to do it, we're going to know what to do. And that's
yeah,
the biggest thing about role plays. Everybody hates doing role plays, but it's like, bro, but if we actually take role plays seriously and we
mhm,
really actually try to do the MC3 skill traits, and we try to really do the skill steps, and we get them down, then when we have to enable, we're going to enable. When we have to engage, we're going to engage. When we have to, talk about disinterest, when we have to address these different things, we will know how to do that because we've been
yeah,
preparing for it. And and it's like what you were saying too, like I had this guy, and I'm sure this has happened to you. I had this guy who was one of my recruiters, and I was trying to figure out how to get through to him. He's very introverted, and I was trying to get through to him, and I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna try something different. So it was Friday, doing training as always, and I was like, hey, stand up in front of all of us and just talk about your car, because he loved his 370Z. So I was like, yo, stand up in front of us and just talk about your car. So he spent like 30 minutes talking to us about his car. So then I was like, okay, transition to business. I was like, you just talked to this dude, you just stopped him. He has the same car. You saw his car, so you complimented it, and now you're talking about your car. And I'm like, okay, well, now transition to business. And what was crazy, and I videotaped it, is that you would see like you would literally see his persona go from being all about the Nissan, the car, and everything, to like, well, hey, man, I'm Sergeant so and so with the Marines. And then his face would change and his voice would change. And then you'd be like, bro, who the hell am I talking to? Like, who is,
right.
like, you just, your whole body, like, you just like morphed into some other person. And it's just like, he's like, yeah, well, because I'm uncomfortable talking about this. And I'm like, what the hell? So like it took forever for it, like it took him like legit like 2 years on the duty to finally in his third year start writing. And unfortunately, like, most people are gonna say, like, dude, I don't got 2 years for you to write a contract, bro. Like,
Right.
so what helped you, leaving BRC and graduating, like, how did your time start off? Like from like leaving, graduating BRC, checking in, like how did your time start off, like as an introvert? Like, was it good? Was it bad? Was it hard? Like, did you like what was going on there?
Well, I think it's a little bit different for every person,
Yeah.
especially ones that
Yeah.
are primarily introverted. What especially when we talk about prospecting activities, like what they're comfortable with. Some people, even as introverts, believe it or not, are more comfortable ACing, which
Mm.
I don't quite understand that personally, because that's one of my biggest weaknesses. But I love the phones, and that's what I stayed on. But it was a combination of that and something that we talk about all the time as recruiters, and that's systematic recruiting. So I kind of,
Hold on. Stop. Hold
I,
on. I have to stop you immediately because, bro, there's people out there that are recruiters. There's this thing called 8411s, and
yeah,
when you say the
yeah,
words telephone calls and you
yeah,
say systematic recruiting,
yeah.
immediately they're like, those two things don't
Okay,
exist. So I
fair enough,
love it.
fair
So
enough,
no. So
fair enough.
I love it when someone like yourself says that, because it's funny to me, like, all joking aside, like it's funny to me, like when on the page that we're a part of, all
Right,
I ever see people say is that TCs don't work, and that dinosaurs use TCs, and 8412s are so out of touch because TCs don't work. And then I have people like yourself
right,
come on to my podcast and literally say, bro, I love TCs and they work. And then you
Yeah.
say that you're systematic and you talk. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How do you use the telephone call systematically?
Well, I think that it was kind of an evolution of things. So it started off that way primarily, and what it was is I just used what I learned, right? The basics of this is why we're systematic, right? You have your follow-ups. I came into a sector that had been only gapped for about 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Okay. And I had all this stuff on my plan, who are these people, unallocated events and stuff like that. And I have to do my follow-ups. So, I talked to my staff too. I see my boss, and it was like, okay, what do I do? What does this look like? And he kind of gave me a basic rundown, and I just started it off like that. And that kind of got me into making those initial phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And what that transformed into is, well, their objectives. And I was like, well, I'm going to give 100% into this as best I can in this activity. And I did that, and I kind of got lucky. I mean, there were people that previous recruiters had talked to, seniors in high school, then seniors in high school, that had always thought about joining the Marine Corps. I mean, I got into the duty about April timeframe. So coming into May, we were working with the new seniors already. And that's kind of what I fell into. And then, a gentleman, Dylan Aceves, he was my first contract, and he was one of those guys. He talked to every Marine Corps recruiter from the time he was in 9th grade until the end, which is what happened. And then moving on into June, my second one was a gentleman that was literally a follow-up. One of the first actual follow-ups that I got a hold of.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I am flabbergasted. You're telling me that your first 2 contracts were done based off of using MC3 and the follow-up?
Yes.
Who would have freaking thunk?
It's crazy, right?
And that's the thing about it, bro, is that that's what kills me, bro, is that and I've said this in prior episodes, man, but I'm glad to hear it from you, because I can say it 1,000 times, and 8412 can say it 1,000 times, your BRC instructor can say it 1,000 times, but somebody on the street currently, and everyone's oh my God, bro, it kills me. Because it kills me so much, because people tell me that I'm not on the streets right now during COVID and through dentists, so I don't understand. Things have totally changed. But then I have someone who's currently on the streets who says, bro, I TC and it works, and I systematically recruit and it works. And here's the thing. You came out on the duty and you said, hey, I was taught the basics. I'm going to use the basics, and I'm going to sit at my desk, and I'm going to conduct what's called the follow-up. And then you did it, and it worked. And that's it. The other person, they come out on the duty and they say, no, that's stupid. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it's going to work. Well, then, of course, it's not going to work like that, because you don't believe, you're not putting in the effort for it to work like that.
Belief is huge. Belief is so huge.
So what would you say your effort looked like, though? How do you, what I want you to tell me, if you can, is how do you make the telephone call work? How, what's your trick? What do you do? Because a lot of people literally cannot make a telephone call effective. So what would you say is what your go-to, how do you kind of go through it?
Well, I think that it evolves over time, and it's honestly something that, and to be completely transparent, it was what I started off with during my first year. And as I became more effective with other activities, I kind of didn't really stray away from it, but it's not something I did as much. But baseline was, I had an ARI that was filling in for the RI, and he did my part, and he was big on scripts when we first hit the streets. And we went by the scripts, and he actually did my par eval, and I was making a phone call, and I said something just out of the blue. It was something along the lines of just, I engaged without having any rapport with the dude or whatever the case was.
Yeah.
But he was like, "Who told you to say that?" Like, not being mean. He's like, "Who told you to say that?" And I was like, "Nobody." He's like, "Well, what about what I gave you?" I was like, "There's a reason for it, and with enough repetition, you're gonna have time to put your own spin on it when you become comfortable with it. But if you don't stick with the framework as it stands, because I mean, realistically, that's what this job is. It's framework after framework, and once you get the framework down, the art comes into play.
Yeah.
Once you know that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of really eye opening for me, and I stuck to that. I stuck to the script that I was given. It was broken down because this was coming right out of COVID,
Mhm.
um, and it was broken down into the different scenarios,
Yeah.
whether you get a parent, applicant, whatever on the phone. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
but that's
and
that's what I focused on.
yeah, dude, and it's like anything, like it's like fighting, like if you fight the same person over and over again, you know that you're gonna get this thing, so you're gonna get
Yep.
a left hook. Okay, like, well, let me dodge it, right? And that's the same
Yep.
thing with a phone call. Like bro, you hear
Same stuff.
the same problem from a parent, you hear the same thing from this person, and at this point, like if you haven't learned how to adapt to that, like then it's you. And one thing I always used to say to people, man, like people, I had recruiters all the time, even myself, like a kid would hang up on me or a parent would hang up on me, and I would say, yo, they're a bitch. And then one day I looked at myself and I was like, no, I'm the bitch. I'm like, bro, I'm the one that's not understanding how to get around their disinterest, and I'm not figuring out how to keep them on the phone. It's not them, it's me. And when I started
Yep.
looking at it like that, I was like, you know what? I need to get on the phone and I need to do better. And that's the thing
Yep.
is like I started trying to my aim changed. I was like, you know what? Instead of me trying to get people to, to agree into an appointment, I
Yep.
just want to keep mom or dad on the phone for as long as I possibly can. I was like, and I started to play a game out of it. How long can I keep mom talking? And then what that did for me was it helped me build rapport with the mother and then get her on my side and then switch
Mhm.
from this hostile mom that wanted nothing to do with me to now saying, you know what, I will give you my son's phone number. Or, you know what, he's in the next room. Let me go grab him. Because if you do that and you lighten the mom up, you schmooze her up a little bit, her whole demeanor changes because you got to think about it. Like I'm a parent. Are you a parent?
Yep. Got two little ones.
Yeah. See, like, and that's the thing. A lot of people. I'm a very different recruiter now than I was when I wasn't a parent because now I understand. Like, dude, and this is what people don't understand. Like when you're single and you're not a parent, like, bro, you're a stranger that's calling my house to talk to my minor.
Yeah.
And then you're mad at me when I don't hand you the phone and I'm like, yeah, here, go talk to them. Like, dude, you're a solicitor calling my house. I don't know who the hell you are, and it's dinner time.
Mhm.
Like, why are you so like if we don't break that wall down and we don't build rapport and we don't get them to truly understand like what we're doing here and we don't become a part of the community, well, it makes doing that activity so much harder.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, shout out to my station commander, Staff Sergeant Anthony. But one thing, I work at a PCS, so he doesn't always get to see me work as often as he would like, right? But one thing that he tells me, and it's something that I even struggled to through like to this day. And so I want nobody to think that they're like alone in this, no matter how
Yeah,
far you
yeah.
are along. But even at 2 years, something that he says to me often is, don't go around them, go through them. And
Yeah.
what he really means by that is exactly what you're saying. Like, talk to them, find out, like, okay, hey, no, like, what does so and so have going on? Just start trying to break down those walls.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to be making, a bunch of senseless phone calls with little to no result.
Yeah. Dude, it's one of the things that we started doing, it wasn't my idea. I wish it was my idea. Like I would love to take it and say it was my idea, but it wasn't. There was a station commander in New Jersey that I worked with. I don't remember his name, but one day he shared in the group chat that they played TC bingo. And I was like, whoa, how do we make that work? I was like, what? So essentially, and dude, I'm telling you, man, it changed our lives. It was right when COVID hit, and it made TCing, like, it made it fun. And what we would do is we would take a dry erase board, and we would, make the bingo board, and each box was a different thing that someone would say on the phone. So we would come up with all these normal phrases like "not my son," or like "oh, we'll call back," or "not interested," or "oh, he's got a full ride." And we would write all of these different sayings in each individual box. And as you would make TCs, if the person said it on the phone, then you would cross out that would be your box, and then you would get the box. But the only thing is that you couldn't triple stack. So like if someone said all three in one phone call, it didn't matter. Like you couldn't do that. So you just had to. So I started like goading people into saying like thank you for my service. So I would be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And my boys caught on to it, and they're like, bro, hold on. You can't get people to hang up on you. Like one of them was like if you get hung up on. So I would purposely get people to hang up on me so I would get that one. But dude, it made TCs so much better because I don't want anyone to take this and be like, oh, but they're making a mockery out of it. No, it made it into a competition, and then it also made us aware of these things that we all got, and then we would listen in on how Durkee got around it. We would listen into and that's another thing too. When we would do TC Power Hours, this is something I learned from my friend Jackman. He was in a neighboring RSS. He was like, bro, when you guys do TC Power Hours, he was like, when somebody gets on the phone, everybody hang up their phones and listen to what the other person is saying. So that this way, at the end of their conversation or through it, you can critique them and help them through the phone call. Because sometimes you get caught up and you're like, oh shit, what am I going to, or you get, you start thinking ahead and you forget your train of thought. You don't know where to go. And if someone's right there with a whiteboard, like, yo, she said this, you missed it. And now, now we're helping one another. And that's the thing, is that a lot of people don't help each other through TCs.
Yeah. No, I mean it's way too common because, especially depending on the chemistry you have in your own office, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to kind of get through, and finding creative ways like that to get through it is super important, because I mean nobody likes it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes sitting there and dialing number after number over and over again, especially, like I said, depending on your flavor as somebody that may or may not be introverted, right? And one thing that I'll definitely take away from this is the power hour with the whiteboard. Like, that's super awesome, because I can't tell you how many times that people have just tried to mouth stuff to me. They're like,
yeah.
It's like,
dude, what are you saying, bro?
What do you even say,
bro? I
right?
always,
You're not helping me.
Bro, in my office, I always had three. I got them from headquarters, man. I got the big whiteboards, dude, and I always had three in the office, just so that like I could listen to my recruiters on the phone. And if I heard something, I'd be like, yo, I caught that, because they might have overlooked it or something,
right?
And I would just quickly grab it, and I wouldn't interrupt their phone call, because then I'm going to take them away from the phone call. But then at the end of the phone call, I could diagnose the situation and be like, hey man, so tell me about what this person said. And maybe they missed it. And then, and that's the thing too, is that, especially in a telephone call, or especially in an interview process, right? How many times do people give us things and we miss it? And we're like, oh, like, yeah, I didn't hear them say that. They said that. And you're like, bro, like they told you their priority need, and you just kept going over it. Like, and they brought it back up and brought it back up. So that's why I always had a board, and I would just like, boom. And, and I used to, when I first started the duty, I hated note taking. But then I had I had a Mass Sergeant ARI who was like, bro, start taking notes. He was like, dude, just start taking notes. And he's like, even in your interview, he's like, just tell them like, hey, listen, you know, because some people might find it disrespectful. But he was like, just let them know, like, hey, the reason why I'm making these notes is so that I don't miss something that you may say that's important to me, and I don't want to
Right.
miss it, you know. So I just want to take these notes. so so as an introvert, can you kind of just tell us what are some things that has worked for you, like how you go into your day, or how you go into class talks, like, or how do you, you know, AC, like what do you do that kind of helps the anxiety?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. And it's something that I honestly ask myself a lot because I know that I'm not the only person that feels like this, which
Yeah.
is one of the small things that helps me because I know that I'm not alone. And I know that, you know, a lot of times the people that I talk to could also be the same kind of people. So I try
Yeah.
to humanize it as much as I can. That everybody's going to have their different flavor on what makes them comfortable. So, you know, whatever to my 8412s out there, right? But you know, whether you're in civies or you're in uniform, like it's
Mhm.
going to make each person feel a lot different, right? For me,
Yeah.
uniform helps me because as an introvert, one of my issues is like confidence.
Yeah, getting
So
attention.
with yeah, and with
Mhm.
that, like it gives it to me. And that and just continuing to hype myself up. Well, you know, like I said at the beginning, like that, it does work. And then just the repetition too, because there was time after time when I originally first got on the duty where it was just kind of disappointment after disappointment, excuse after excuse why I couldn't get like an AC contact or, you know, why I didn't set an appointment at one of my schools or, you know, whatever the case was. And it's, it's a combination of who you really are as a person because it's hard to really nail down because every introvert's going to have their own reason
Mhm.
why they couldn't do something. But if
So
they
can
care,
you
if Go
can
ahead.
you
Sorry.
sorry, no, I'm sorry, man, but can you
No
say
worries.
that again? Because I want to make sure people understand that is what I've noticed in this conversation is that you're huge on accountability, and a lot
Mhm.
of what you're talking about is being accountable to yourself because
Yeah.
you're saying like, dude, I would go back to my office and I wouldn't have AC contacts and I would just come up with these excuses. And then all of a sudden I started to realize like, well, actually it's me and I'm not doing this. So can you
Yeah.
kind of talk a little bit more about that? Because the reason why I want you to talk about that is because that's what recruiters do. I'm
Yep.
sorry. That's what we as human beings do.
Yeah.
You know, when
Absolutely.
someone's like, hey, why didn't you do this? And immediately every reason under the sun, oh, well, you know, I was out for 3 hours ACing and there was nobody out there. I saw nobody. And it's like, so you're telling me that you were out there for 3 hours and you saw not one person? Yeah, no, nobody. But when we go out right now, I see everybody. So, like, can you talk about that? Like, how did you come to this realization that, like, bro, I'm just making excuses and I have to switch this up?
I mean, what it really started with was just not having the results because I mean, regardless of what people think about the standards in a particular AO of like, well, an hour should net you 2 AC contacts, right? Um, Regardless of that, like not only do you see other recruiters doing it, but you kind of start to reflect back of like, okay, well, I seen this person, and well, I didn't know if he or she was qualified, right? But I made some sort of snap judgment, or I talked myself out of it, right? Which happens. It happens. So it still happens to me to this day. So I don't want anybody to think that
Yeah,
like I'm
yeah,
the
yeah,
perfect
yeah.
person because this is it's a process that well, you have to just continually try to get better at and be more accountable of yourself. But that's what happened. What happens? We talk ourselves out of it. And
Yeah.
what I did was just it was just drive. I mean,
Mhm.
depending on the situation, and this still does happen to this day, is based on the situation that I'm in. Like I said, this isn't a fix all,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But there's a different attitude you have when you have nothing coming into tomorrow versus having something coming into tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, but what that shows you as a person, like, oh no, I have to figure something out. I have to make this work it
Yeah.
it can create desperation depending on who you are as a person, right? But
Yeah.
oftentimes, and what happened with me is I found myself to be extremely successful, and now my my BP, my business percentage, is ACs. But that's and wow, I'm an introvert, right? That's crazy. Like now,
Yeah.
primarily when we look at it, it's over 60%, and that's my thing. Uh, which it still blows my mind, to be honest
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you.
Well,
But
but I think from the conversation and that we're having, it sounds like you just built up your confidence through the telephone call, and then you realized, wait a minute, if I can do this good behind a phone, what could I do in front of somebody? And that's what it like, because I'll be honest, it was the flip for me. Like me, I dude, my first 2 years on recruiting duty, like all I ever did was AC. I loved ACing. Like I would never, like I would make TCs, but like just to hit my objectives. Like I'll be honest,
right,
like
yeah,
oh yeah, you need TCs,
who
gotcha,
doesn't?
boss. Like whatever. And I would go AC. Like I'd be like, oh, you need appointments tomorrow. You need NWAs. Boom, I got it. And then COVID hit, and now I was a station commander, and I knew how to TC. I just didn't like it. So now
Right,
I was a station commander, and I was like, you know what, man? Like if I'm going to expect my Marines to make phone calls and be good at it, then I have to be able to be good at it and teach them how to be good at it. So I just got really good at making phone calls because at that point in life, it was the only opportunity we had.
right, right.
But that's awesome though that that you kind of switched it up, man. But what I also want to like kind of drive home too though is that like why do you care? Like why do you, like why do you care? And I say that because like one of the things you said, right, is that you saw other people returning with results, but you weren't. And that started to eat at you and bother you. Let's be honest. There's Marines that are on recruiting right now that are substandard and have been substandard for 2 years, and they don't care that they're coming home every night with nothing. So why do you give a fuck? Like why what was it that made you realize like, dude, like I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. I'm not being the staff sergeant or the sergeant that I need to be. Like what was it that kind of knocked that in your head?
Well, it's a combination of a lot, but I would say that, and I'll give this disclaimer every single time. It really just depends on what's important to you. I mean, it's no different than, and I have this philosophy, which hopefully we could talk about this another time, but I have this philosophy that, like, as Marines,
Yeah.
um, like we're supposed to care, like whether we volunteered or we didn't, right? Like we are here to do a job,
Mhm.
and even as hard as that job can be, we gotta
Bro.
figure it out. And yeah, and like and
No, let's talk about this right now,
yeah,
bro. So this is the perfect time to talk about this, right? Because and
yeah,
I really want to hear what you're gonna say because I'm loving it, bro. That's exactly my thing, right? So I'll be honest, this guy that hit me up asked me about the whole introverted thing, right? He
hmm
was like, "Hey man, I haven't heard you do an episode about, introvert, how do they make it work and stuff like that." I was like, "All right, awesome." I was like, "Yeah, I'll get somebody on, right?" And my first one of the first things I said to this guy, I've never talked to him before. I said to him, "Mr. Staff Sergeant," and I messaged him and I said, "Hey man, do you mind if I'm frank with you? Like, do you mind if I'm just straight shooting with you?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." And I said, "Hey man, are you a father?" He said, as I looked at his Instagram because he was hitting me up on Instagram, and I was like, "Are you a father?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I was like, as I noticed this picture of him and his family and his kids, and I was like, bro, if your boss told you that tomorrow, if you didn't have appointments, you lost your job and you no longer had income and you couldn't take care of your family, do you think that you would find an appointment? And I was like, so my challenge to you is that tomorrow you speak to 10 people. I was like, I don't care if you even have an appointment. I was like, I just want you to speak to 10 people. I was like, can you do that for me? And then he tells me, oh, I didn't feel good and I was sick or whatever. And then the next day, but here's my thing though, right? And he's probably going to listen to this episode. Dude, I want everybody to listen to what Ant's going to say, because the reality of it is this, man. We are taught from the early ages of our Marine Corps careers in boot camp that no matter what you do, you grow where you're planted and you make shit happen. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, people get put into recruiting duty, and it's okay to fail. And it's okay to be like, oh, well, I tried. So what is your mentality on that situation? Like, yo, like because from what I'm understanding from you is,
Yeah.
yo, I'm an introvert, but guess the fuck what? I have to be extroverted to make my job. Like, I have to do it because this is my job in my position as a Marine right
Yeah.
now.
So, it just depends on who you are as a Marine, because I I care about, especially once, and sometimes this is bad, but especially once I get to know somebody, especially like my team, like there's no part of me that's not going to give everything I have to them, because you know what happens when we're not making it? Everybody's working. It doesn't matter, especially depending on your station commander, right? Like things could vary, but in the position that I was in, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And I wasn't gonna be that guy that ruined it for somebody else. And maybe I'm selfless in this aspect, or maybe I'm not. I don't know, but I just care a lot about the livelihood of everybody else to a point where I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be that dude. Like I'm
Yeah.
not. And you talk about like this gentleman that reached out to you, like speak to 10 people. Shout out to my RS that will not be named, but like
Yeah.
that's our
Yeah.
stand. That's our standard, though.
Yeah.
That's the standard that we've implemented, but it works wonders.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, it's just I don't want to let the team know,
Yeah.
and it's going to vary from person to person, and
Yeah.
it's something that has to be developed over time. You can't just, and this is probably the thoughts of a lot of introverts. You can't just come in and have high expectations, which as an introvert you would think that there's not a lot of high expectations. We think, oh, it's gonna be shit. We're not gonna. I don't know how I'm gonna talk to people, but it's a process. It's chipping away bit by bit every single day from the day you get out here until the day you leave, to get better at talking to people, to going outside of your comfort zone and
Mhm.
being uncomfortable, and eventually maybe you won't be that guy that's a centurion, or writing 24 contracts a year or whatever, but over time you're going to see the progression. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be you. So if there's anything that I can tell those guys that are listening to that, it doesn't have to be you, but as long as you know, and and by you knowing, like, you're holding yourself 100% accountable, or at least close to it,
Yeah.
you're giving what it takes to give back to your team, and throughout your time,
Yeah.
then you're not necessarily wrong. And yeah, if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
3 4 months
Yeah.
out here and you're substandard, then hey man, it is what it is. But as long as you're doing your part,
Man.
then
Yeah.
you're not necessarily wrong.
Yeah. No, and you know what? Like, and that brings a point like that I always try to remind people too is like, bro, like if you at the end of the day, if you know shit can go to bed and lay down your head knowing that, like, bro, I tried to talk to everybody. I
Yeah,
tried to freaking do this and I did this and I did this and it just didn't work. But like legitimately you did that and it really
yeah,
didn't work. Like that's a
absolutely.
different story. Right. But I also got to be honest too. Like I think, this is me just being real, man. I think a huge part of this problem is that there's a lot of people who are substandard, but they don't get the training they need in order to be better. So that there's these people like we're talking about right now, like that are on a nut, and they've been on a nut for like 3 months, and now they're depressed that they're on a nut. And this one of the people that reached out to me, I don't remember his exact words, but he essentially was like, bro, it tears me up inside that I went from the Fleet Marine Corps, where I was phenomenally good at my job for 8 years, and now I'm in this new position and I'm horrible.
Right.
And I'm one of the worst in the state. And now and I'm trying to be better, but no one's helping me. And I think that's the biggest problem
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
that we and I'll say this, when I was a station commander, I think that as staff sergeants and as, gunnies and as senior enlisted, I feel like we fail our Marines a lot of times when it comes to the training piece. Like we get so caught up in the mission, and we get so caught up in the documents and all these other things that we forget that, like, bro, like, yeah, this dude's, a sunken chest wound, but when was the last time we went out with that guy and we watched him area canvas? Like one of the guys that I was talking to, I said to him, he's on his 3-month eval. I said, hey man, let me ask you a question. I was like, has anybody ever taken you out area canvassing and just pointed at someone and told you to go talk to him right now? And he was like, no one's ever done that. And I'm like, wait a minute, you've been on the streets for 3 months and no one's ever told you to go just talk to that random person? And he's like, no. And I'm like, bro, like, so like that's not the dude he's being failed.
Yeah. You know what's honestly crazy about that too is I was one of those guys. And the irony in that, right, is that, like we've been talking about, like I was one of those guys. First true AC contact that I got was an appointment, and a dude who showed up, like no shit, showed up and turned to an interview, and it blew people away. Like that wasn't like a thing.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a thing that happened. Like, oh wow, you said an AC contact appointment on the spot, and he showed.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a thing, and it's super weird, but I didn't have anybody that said, "Oh, go talk to this dude."
Yeah.
It was a lot of, well, first of all, not being held accountable at that time for the context that I did get or did not get, because this was probably, I got April of 21 is when I got there, and this was around mid-June, and it was crazy to a lot of people, but I had never seen that. I had never seen anybody say, hey, go talk to that person. And I never had that sort of training myself. So that was something that kind of like that I've seen with other people. It kind of blew my mind. Just like it blew your mind when he told you, like, hey, nobody said that to me. Nobody's ever been out with me and done that.
Yeah.
It's
and
it's
that's
ridiculous.
and that's what I'm saying, man, is like if you really look at like across MCRIC, like that happens a lot. That there's Marines that are just like, oh, he'll figure it out. And then it's also like, and then it's the same thing too. It's like, bro, you expect this Marine, like especially for someone who's not extroverted,
Right.
you expect this Marine who has no sales skills to just come out of the fleet and just start setting appointments left and right, all willy nilly,
Right.
like some some gunslinger, and it's like, and you expect him to write 2 and 2 and 2 and 2,
Right.
and then it's like, you know what? Hey, screw that 369 that we're supposed to do, like, and it's just like, dude, like, what if we actually took training seriously and we took time to be with these Marines, and that's the thing too, like if a Marine is severely deficient in something, and we know that, well, then what are we doing to help it? Like, if you're deficient in telephone calls, is anybody sitting there with a whiteboard trying to help you become proficient at it?
Yeah. I mean, and that brings up something that myself and the other recruiters had a conversation about the other day, is when you look at the numbers for a particular RS, right?
Mhm.
And you have however many recruiters on a zero.
Yeah.
And let's say you have multiple from a particular RSS. What would happen, right? What would happen if you spent, and I know this may be hard, like I'm not saying that I'm an 8412
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or I've been in that position, right? But what would happen if you spent 2 to 3 days consistently, so you get around to every other recruiter or however many days it takes just for one station, which kind of goes against the systematic recruiting piece, right? Because I feel, and I don't know, but I feel like they do the same thing when they come out with CGAP and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Right? They try to spread the love. But what would happen if you gave that focus and that energy into a single station with multiple recruiters on a zero or substandard and spent that time with your expertise
Mhm.
to just kind of figure out what's going on, like ask
Yeah.
questions, explore with them, figure out what's going on, and try to apply your best fix. Will it be the best fix? Who knows, right? But what would happen, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be the difference between, I mean, you
Well,
could
that's
change.
also, like one of the things that I always said as well is like what, like and we ended up doing this my third year, my no, my fourth year, my last year on the duty. We ended up doing this and it changed everything. We ended up doing sector training. And what
Right.
they would do is we would have like three neighboring RSSs. We would come together on a Friday and we would start doing training at like a local restaurant or at the office or whatever. And the guy that I'm going to have on Friday, Ebok, um, he was an introvert
Right.
and he started talking to my introvert in my office and telling him, "Hey, man, this is how I'm successful in my RSS, and these are the things that I do." And then they met up together, and he showed him, "Hey, like
Yeah.
this is how I do my job." And I think that's a big part of it is that across, so we have the RS, and then we
Hmm.
have the RSSs, and unfortunately, on recruiting duty, you're told that it's an individual duty and
Yep.
then you become, let's just be honest here, RSS versus RSS. You don't give a damn about any other RSS.
Nope.
If they take my Deppon holds, bro, I'm fighting you. And literally, like you get so angry and you don't care about the Marine to the left and right of you. Let's just be real here. And but if we didn't act like that, and we actually did, like say, we make mission and we're like a week out, why not go help and find out, hey, why is this Marine deficient? Why is
Right.
is this Marine going through what I went through a year ago? Is this Marine going through what I went through a month ago? And I think a huge problem, and I think it's happening more and more as we talk, but I think a big thing is that there's not like there's not enough cross pollination happening, and
Yeah.
and that's why I created this right here is because now you're on here, you're telling us, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what worked for me. This is how I grew on the duty. This is how I did this. This is how I did this. And now somebody who's introverted can come on here and listen to this episode and be like, "Oh, you know what, man? Like, I'm being a bitch. Like, I'm not working as hard as I need to. I'm not
Right.
doing my job. I'm not, or maybe it is, the lack of training. Like, there's a whole whirlwind of different things that are happening,
Yeah.
and there needs to be an understanding of like, hey, what could it be?
Yeah.
But again, I agree. Like, I think that there's Marines that don't get a fair shake, and there's Marines that don't get enough training. But at the same time, man, like I do understand that ARIs and RIs are very stretched thin, especially
Oh
because
yeah.
like
Absolutely.
Some RSs are huge. Like you
Oh
have
yeah.
RSs that are states away from each other. Like there's there's some of them that cover different
Yeah.
states, and it's like, hey, in order for me to go see this office, I have to fly there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a battle.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, with us, I mean, you're looking at at least a 2 hour drive, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that, but I think that a big problem that we have is just like it's outside of what is the norm for most of us that have been on recruiting duty. Like I've had what we call cross pollination, like training, right?
Mhm.
Whether we do virtual all hands with another RSS where we go to their office because it's like 20 minutes away, or whatever the case may be. But it's not something that is as normalized to us because we don't care about them on a day to day. We care about us. We care about me and mine, so to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it doesn't happen enough. But I think that there's a lot of value in it, and there's probably I don't know the numbers. Nobody really does, but there's probably a person that's like me, or at least similar, and probably most RSSs. And I think that it could be valuable to just have those conversations, but it's not really something that, unless you're going to provoke it in your
Yeah.
particular area, it's not going to be something that's really promoted or initiated by anybody but like yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the but you know what? And that's the thing too is that like, I had somebody say this stuff that a while ago. I said this to them, um, and I was like, at all hands, we go through the doctrine, which is 100% we need it, right? It's
Yeah, of
This is the Marine
course.
Corps. We need doctrine. We need to know how things work. But one of the things that I had said was, at all hands, like, why don't we let the sergeants and the staff sergeants and the recruiters with guided discussion have moments where they can talk about what they're going through and how they're getting through it,
Right.
because what's going on in RSS so and so, it may not have happened where I am, but it may happen in a couple of months, and I may just not be prepared for it. But if we're at an
Right.
all hands and we're all together talking about what we're battling and what we're facing, whether it's mental health or whether it's the duty,
Right.
this way we can talk about it. And the person was like, oh well, what's stopping you guys from doing that? And it's like, well, you are, because you have this plan, and then we're here from 8 a.m. until 4 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock, like, we're all done, and we're either going to go back to the office to work harder, or not. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that it's and it's attempted, right? Like I see it attempted with how we try to do training, right?
yeah,
Um, with trying to get everybody involved and interacted and with other people in general.
yeah,
But I think that there's just not. I think it's just an attempt. I
yeah,
don't think there's enough passion into the value, and I
yeah,
think that that's the real problem. Is I don't think that a lot of people, regardless of their intent, right, see a lot of value um, in doing it because of whatever other agenda. Like maybe there is something we have to take time for
yeah.
that's more pressing or more important, you know, uh,
Hmm.
and that's just well, that's not going to change. Like there's
Yeah,
always going to be
yeah,
something like that, but I think that it would change just a little bit, and maybe there would be something else
yeah.
that we could do to kind
Hmm.
of try to implement something more like that. Like, yeah, we got all hands once a month, but if you think that a singular, I'm not advocating for Saturday work or even uh, even just straight up training on a whole Friday. But I think that potentially, I don't know, but I think potentially the benefits could outweigh the cost that it takes, especially if your whole RSS between the whole RS is working on that day anyways, like, well, what is it going to hurt?
Yeah.
Right. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just spitballing, just what
Yeah,
I
no,
really
yeah, I
think
think
that it could be a benefit.
yeah, I think it could, man. I think it could definitely give value. So we're hitting an hour right now. So
Yeah,
my last question for you, man, really
for sure.
is just, what advice do you have for the person who is, maybe they're 3 or 6'9", they're in that 3 to 6'9", MOJT, and they're still feeling the effects of being an introvert. Like, they really just don't understand it. Like, is there any, like, books you've listened to, podcasts? Is there anything that's helped you on your endeavor into becoming better at this? And what
Uh,
advice do you have for them?
well, I think just to put it plainly, I think that just a lot of introspection of who you are as a Marine, as a man or woman, is probably the first step. Because right then and there, you're going to know if you're going to be able to put forth the effort necessary. And then the second piece to that is just, we talked about perfecting the craft, right? But just putting in those repetitions and doing the uncomfortable things like role playing. Like I used to hate role playing too, like 100%. But now I'm the hugest advocate for it because I know that it helps. And just believing. And once you kind of put those, it's the gaff factor, right? It's the give a F factor, right? The gaff, um, knowledge, and then just not letting people down. And then you come into it with as much confidence as you can, which sounds ridiculous from an introvert, but like I come home most days mentally exhausted because it's hard to do it, right? But I'm out here doing it. And I've been told, like, wow, you're really good at talking to people. I was like, oh, you don't even know. Like, sure, maybe that's true, or maybe you think it's true,
Yeah, like
but
you
but
you
I
don't
but I
even
just
you don't know what this is causing me
you
right
don't
now.
even know. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just uh, gaining as much knowledge as you can and believing.
Yeah.
Because if you believe in something, you will preach about it like you're the preacher man at
Yeah.
church.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Bro,
maybe
and
that's what we're missing. I don't know.
yo, I gotta be honest, man, and that'll be my ending thought, man, unless you have anything else. But like, that's one thing I've said since day one, man. Is I think that, in my opinion, I think that's a huge thing that's lacking in the recruiting world. Is a lot of people just don't believe in what they're talking about. They
Yeah.
don't believe it anymore. Like, there's a lot of people that maybe, they just came back from a bad unit, or they feel like they've been cheated by the Marine Corps, or they got effed over, and now they're like, oh well, now I got to go talk about this thing that I hate so much. And it's like, dude, if you believe in it, or you reaffirm your faith, and you find yourself in love with the Marine Corps again, and you return you know to it, it's the truth, man. Like, if you do not believe in what you're talking about, it makes it that much harder to talk about it. And so just have the knowledge. So this is what I've received through this
Yeah.
episode: have the knowledge, perfect your craft, repetitions, and belief. Like, that's the four major points that I've gotten out of this episode, man. And I really appreciate it, bro. I thank you so much for the
Yeah.
time. It really means a lot, when people come on here and kind of just share, what they've been going through, and the exhausting hours, because we know that it is. So when anyone comes on here, man, especially being on the duty currently, like, I know what it
Yeah.
takes for you to, right now you could be with your family or whatever it is, but right now you're, taking time out with me. So I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else before we hop off, man?
I would say that the very last thing I have, and it's something that I use every day, and it's something that every single recruiter that watches this can use, is I boast about being an introvert through every interaction, whether it's a TC, whether it's an AC, HV. During the beginning of an interview, I am an introvert, and I'm doing this. I'm being uncomfortable
Mm,
because I care about this. and what
mm.
that and what that will end up doing for you, or at least what it does for me, is it breaks down a lot of walls. It makes me feel comfortable, which is what matters most to an introvert.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, either the confidence just flows or you're just happy to be
Oof.
there.
Bro, you just got me, man. You just I feel like I'm
Hey,
on the other side of a table right now
all
getting
right.
benefit tagged,
Yeah,
bro. Like,
hey man, it
woo.
works. It
Yo, because
works.
it's true though. It is
It
so
works.
true, because
So
you're the product right now. And that's what I always tell people, man. Is like, yo, and people get mad at me, like, bro, you are the product. Like, when people are like, oh, I don't have product knowledge, motherfucker, you are the product,
yeah,
because you're sitting here slinging these tags, talking about confidence, talking about leadership, and you're like, bro, I'm an introverted mother effer, And I'm sitting here telling you that you don't have to be, and you can be just like me. And why am
Just
I
like
being
me.
and why am I being that way? I'm being that way because I'm helping you change your life just like somebody years ago changed mine. And I'm helping you no longer. And that's the thing too, is like, yo, once an introvert, always an introvert. Like it's
Yep.
just who you are. But that doesn't mean that you have to allow it to control yourself, man. So I appreciate everything you said, bro. You got me hyped now.
Absolutely.
Bro,
Man.
thank you so much, man. Hey, have a good rest of the day, bro. Enjoy
Yeah.
yourself. And good luck with everything, bro. And I hope I'll definitely have you on again for other topics. I truly
Yeah.
appreciate
Absolutely.
this, brother. And have a good rest of the night. All right.
Yeah. I appreciate being on, man.
All right. Thanks a lot.